Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome to the Future of Speaking. I'm Kathy Ermias.
I'm Mark Williams, coming at you from the present, talking about the future, and relying on the past to move us forward. I don't know where I just came up with that, but I just came up with that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We're playing with where we're at because someday somebody will be watching this and it will definitely be in the past, but we'll still be talking about the future.
Mm, mm. And,
So,
and and yeah, and I love what we're going to talk about today. You know, one of my
mm,
favorite books, one of my stickiest books to ever read, was Made to Stick.
yes, I love that book. Yeah, definitely. I remember that book. Such a good book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I always call you the queen of so many different things, right? The queen of concepts, the queen of ideas, the queen of TED Talks. Like, seriously, how many crowns do you really wear,
Only the ones you give me, Mark. Really, only the ones you give me.
Kathy? But you're also the queen, I feel, of making ideas stick, right?
Hmm.
And what I'm curious about, actually, as I talked about past, present, and future, I'm curious, Kathy, from your experience, what was the old way of making ideas stick? I'd love to start
Mm.
there first before we talk about the new ways. What were the old ways of making ideas stick?
Ooh, that's such a good question that I wasn't prepared for, by the way. So if you're watching and you're like, they had questions prepared, like Mark just threw a curveball at me. I love that you asked that question because I have a past in marketing and advertising. And I have also seen the way that there's some things that have absolutely 100% stayed the same, and there's things that have changed. And I think I always have this saying of like, you know, there's the never changing things, and then there's the ever changing things. The never changing things are the psychology of what makes things stick for us, the emotions. And then there's the ever changing things, which are the things like how we get it out there. I mean, digital marketing wasn't a thing in the 80s, right? Like, and so not that I started in the 80s, I've just chose a decade to to talk about. Um, but here's what I'll say. If we think about the things that have changed, Mark, what's changed? Tell me. Things that have changed on like the way that we look at ideas. What has changed?
Well, I think what has changed, the way we look at ideas or the way we get ideas across.
Well, both, all.
Mm. Um,
What are some of the things that have changed? Because then we can we can get into a really great discussion about how we do them better.
well, I think one of the first thing that comes to my mind is reach, right? And I'm going all the way from, wow, did we really have a Pony Express and carrier pigeon? Right? Well, we did,
The way that we deliver.
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And now the click of a button and potentially everything you have is all over the world, right? I think the other thing that comes to mind for me that's different is there wasn't a lot to consume, and therefore it wasn't a lot to have to remember. Now we've got a million and one things coming at us at all times, and we've got these devices that allow us to be tuned in 24 hours a day. And so, as communicators, I think it's so much harder now because even though our reach has expanded, our challenge is how do you make something stick when there's a million and one things being thrown at you?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, you described the things that I was thinking about. I mean, as access changes to to ideas. So there was a TED Talk that I loved that it was one of my favorite TED Talks. It was by a comedian. I forgot his last name, but it was Jamie something. And he had a line that I thought was beautiful. He said, "The internet gave us access to everything, but it also gave everything access to us." Oh, right? Now, if you want to talk about say it so it sticks, that's a really good way to say that. So everything that you just explained, he said that in a line. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. And so asking me that question, so full circle, Mark, here's what I think that has kind of always stayed the same. Like really good marketers from the past already knew this and did this in some capacity. Now I think it's critical. And it is that they would create a thing, a container. They would process some of the information for us. They would make it sticky, made to stick. The whole book was about why do some things stick and other things don't. That book was probably made 20 years ago, right?
Mhm.
That has really stayed the same, but now we have to up level on it even more and more and more. And if it was nice to have, or it could easily separate you in the past, now it's like you have to be brilliant about the way that you make things stick.
Mhm.
And so I want to tell you a quick story, and then I thought we could have fun messing around with this.
Okay.
So, I play pickleball.
Yeah, we know, we know, we know.
I've never played or really watched tennis in my life, but I know that Andre Agassi is world class, world level tennis player. So
Yes.
when he decided to play professional pickleball, just for one tournament, he played in the pro circuit. He paired up with an 18-year-old girl who's number one in the world. She's the best, Anna Lee Waters. And even though I've been busy this week and had lots of coaching calls, I set it down. So I'm getting ready. I'm curling my hair, and I have my phone down, and it's sitting there. And I'm like, oh, I have to see how Andre Agassi plays pickleball, because this had already happened, and I was watching the recap. And an ad came on. By the way, he plays really well, very good, very fast hands.
Okay.
And for a 55-year-old, he came in and they lost at the quarterfinals, but he did really well. An ad came on and I couldn't get to it fast enough to skip ad. So I'm listening to this ad about about a 55 and over, community living place that's called Margaritaville.
Mhm.
And if you know anything about Margaritaville, it was in the song,
Yes.
the
Yes.
Margaritaville song. And then it became a very famous restaurant in Vegas. I don't know if you know that, but and so it became a brand. And as I was listening to this, I wasn't really like, oh, I'm going to listen to an ad. And so when I heard Margaritaville, they had already passed over some of the information. I was like, oh, why? I really started to listen, and I thought, Margaritaville is a container. It's not a real place. It doesn't exist. There's no place called Margaritaville. But when you hear the term Margaritaville, what do you think, Mark? What does it make you think? Margaritaville.
Well, first of all, I do always think of the song, right? So now it's stuck in
Start
my
singing
head, right?
it.
I think of the drink. Hold your horses. I think of the drink that I've never had, but I know it's a drink, right? And I think of joy. Yeah, and the Ville part, short for village.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
makes me think of a place filled with joy where people are just drinking and having a good time.
Right? So immediately your brain immediately did something. I asked one of my friends this morning, we went on a walk in the forest, and I said, when I say Margaritaville, what do you think? He goes, freedom, nothing to do but relax. So he had his own version, but
Mm.
same but different, right? And so when I heard that, I thought, that's it. When I try to tell somebody, when I'm coaching people to give a TED talk, and I'll ask them many times, Mark, I'll say, what's your idea? You know what they usually do? They go on to explain something to me, 45 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. And I'm like,
Mhm, mhm.
what you just said wasn't an idea. It was an explanation of an idea. So to
Mm.
make something sticky, we have to give the audience a container. So what if the lyrics of that song, Margaritaville, went something more like this? What if it went, I worked my whole life. I'm not going to sing because that's terrible, right? But I worked my whole life, and now I get to go hang out on a beach in Mexico, and I get to drink margaritas, and my life is so awesome, and I love it, and I hope you join me too. Whatever, right? What am I? There would be no container. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my performance. Like, right. But there would be no container, right? There was nothing, there'd be no what would you even name that song? Living on a beach? I don't know, something, right? So
Yeah,
that was
not living on a prayer, but living on the beach.
yeah, not living on a prayer, living on a beach, right? So the container that he made, which was so beautiful, Jimmy Buffett was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make this. I'm going to make that the name of the song." And now Margaritaville means something, and now it's actually a big brand. I think books are always that way. What if John Maxwell didn't write a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership? But what if the book just started off and it just rambled and it said, hey, there's lots of different things that leaders do, and leaders do all kinds of things. And here, blah, 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 they could be great. But he put it in a container for us. So to make it sticky. And so I'll ask you to just play on this theme. If you want to say something so it sticks, what are some containers that you have seen and heard? And I know you just came off the heels of TEDx Portland, so you might have some that you can share.
I think what comes to mind for me is there's a play on words. And sometimes there's a flip of something. Like, I do remember when we were at TEDx Portland, and I think this has stuck throughout the weekend because so many people talked about it. The grief line.
Oh yeah.
Grief is meant to be felt, not fixed. Right?
Ooh, yeah.
That was such a great line that everybody remembered it the whole weekend and kept referring back to it. Part of it is the alliteration, the felt and the fixed, right? Part of it was it dispelled the myth, but there was something emotional about it, right? Like there was an opposite to it.
Yeah.
So there's the alliteration, there's the opposite, and there's the emotion in it. So those were three things that I thought were like, you're stirring in a pot, you cook it up, and the taste never leaves your mouth.
Oh, I love that, Mark. I love that. That is so brilliant how you brought in the technical aspects of that line, and that was her idea. So if you could you imagine telling somebody that wasn't there, you tell them that line, immediately you've done 80% of the processing for them. What if she never said that? And then you were like, oh, well, there was this brilliant TED Talk, this lady, she lost her mom early, her mom got cancer, and she said she never wanted to forget her mom. And it was a whole process of her dealing, you would have to explain so much. And she gave you a hack.
So that reminds me of, and you and I talk about it all the time, Kevin Hart, right?
Yeah.
Go down, right?
Talk about little firecracker.
Right? So we talk about the line, it's about to go down all the time, right? And we love that particular bit. But when you just said your example, I thought, how you go to a comedy club and you're laughing and you're giggling it up, and then you come home and somebody's like, how was it? And then you're dying to tell them the joke. And you're like, wow, he told the story about the first time he cursed, and then his mom said, and then all of a sudden everybody's lost. They're like, what the hell are you talking about? Don't try to be Kevin Hart, right? But it's about to go down. And to your point, yes, I could have said, well, the speaker spoke about grief. Well, what the hell about grief?
Right. And then, but you're trying to get the gist of it, and then you're trying to explain it, right? Oh my God, the comedian example is so on point, Mark, because John and I love to go, it's our thing. We'll go see famous comedians when they come into town and stuff. And you can never, unless you're a comedian, you can't retell their jokes. So when you're trying to retell it, you're like, oh, this sounds terrible. You should go watch it. You literally go, you should just go watch it.
Yes. And it makes me think, as a communicator, right? after you've heard something, or let's speak about it from the perspective of I'm communicating and I want it to stick. That means that I want people to be able to leave this space, run into somebody else who's going to ask them, oh, well, what did Cathey speak about? I can't sit there and go through all 30 minutes of that conversation. They'd be like, I didn't ask you for the play-by-play. I just asked you for the highlight reel.
Yeah,
That's
the
it.
real highlight, like the 30-second highlight reel.
You know? And so I think if we could go into presentations, conversations, meetings, what have you, with that in mind, right? What is that sticky way that we would want people to kind of repeat what we heard, what we said?
I'm gonna put something out there that I'm working with right now. I won't say who because it hasn't been put on a stage yet.
Okay.
But I do a lot of work with a lot of organizations here in Portland. And so this one happens to be about cancer research. And, I coached Dr. Eric Tran a couple of years ago to give a TEDx Portland talk, and it was phenomenal. And it was striking that balance of like, you listen to Eric talk and you're like, is it just me or is he not speaking any English? And, I know it's not just me because, he's very intelligent. He's very kind and he's so empathetic. And so working with him, the fun part was like trying to find out how can we get rid of the things that don't matter to people? And how do we get the goal of what we want to do in that talk without having to info-splain, without having to be, we don't want to be in info land. We want to be in idea land or story land. We want to be in this space where people are along the ride. And so I am working right now with this one organization, and the head doctor, I had this conversation with him in our first meeting, and I said, hey, we need to put it in a container for people. And it was the first time anybody had told him anything like that. I'm like, look, you're really knowledgeable. I can never, as a coach, I don't come and tell people, what they should say or how they should say it, but I want you to understand the psychology of like, we need to put it in a container. He writes me a message. I think I told you this, Mark. We were at TEDx Portland. So I saw an email and he's like, oh my gosh, I totally get it. And he said, this is the container I was thinking about. He's like, you have 99 problems and you're trying to juggle life. And when you get cancer, you have one now. Everything else goes away. And now you have one problem, and that's the problem you have to deal with. And think about what a powerful container that is. Most of us live our lives where we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. And they don't want to make people feel bad, but they want to make people feel that feeling that people might feel when you go and get a diagnosis of cancer.
Can I tell you what works for me so much about that container example? It was the connection to something familiar. Because when you started off 99 problems, right? And I went straight to the Jay-Z song, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right? And that's okay. That's okay, right? Because it's like I went with the familiar.
Yeah.
And then I went to unique.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think there's something really powerful about that, because from the familiar, I think we get what the new idea is. That's going to stick with me from now on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And so now that we've probably done a good job for anybody that will be watching this in the future about the future, which it will be from in the past, but still about the future. So did that track everything I just said? How do we help people to do that? Like, let's start to break down some of the components. You already mentioned some of them, Mark.
Well, again, alliteration is a great thing, but I would actually go, before I go to that technical tool, emotion is so critical, right? And I think the switch from an old emotion to a new emotion is really critical.
Yeah.
So I just really wanted to pull that out. We remember emotions, right? Maya Angelou always said it. Forget what you said, forget what you did, but never forget the way you made them feel, right? So just thinking about what is that emotion. And then, yeah, now getting into the technicals, how do you play around with either alliteration? How do you play around with rhymes? How do you play around with something familiar? I picked this up from you, Kathy, a while back. I think you were one of the first people really pointed out. Take something familiar and go with a completely different direction on
Yeah,
it.
flip it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That always works really well. You mentioned some things, Mark, though, that I think are really critical. For me, and okay, there's 100,000 different components to what could stick. And
Mhm.
you don't have to hit them all. Of course, there might be a different way you do one thing over another. Like I can give you an example in a second here from my guy that I coach for TEDx Portland and how different that might look than another sticky idea or whatever. But one of the first important things I think is relatability, understandability. When you hear it, you have to kind of already know what it means, even if you don't know fully what's underneath it. You should
Mhm.
hear like that will make it that's really powerful. Like I said, even the word Margaritaville, even though it's just a fake place. But when you hear it, it makes you think about something.
Mhm.
I heard this so funny the other day. Somebody put a comment on like a video and they said, "What in the George Orwell is going on?" What does that make you think immediately? If you know who he
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yes, yes, 1984.
1984, what in this dystopian, what's going on? Like they made something familiar and it's funny, right? And you could
I'm sorry. As soon as you said that, my mind went, what the hell in the George Jefferson is going on
Yeah,
here?
yeah, that too, right? Like that brings up another thought, like this little like aggravated, angry, like always like getting in arguments with his wife and like his, like yeah, there's something that comes up with that, right? So one of the big technical aspects is like how can you hit somebody with they understand it? And now I'm not going to tell everybody that would be watching this. I'm going to ask you explain Scott's idea. So Scott Hanselman is who I coach for TEDx Portland. You saw him speak. It was the first and only time you heard him give the talk that I heard 8,000 times leading up to that. Okay, not that much, but you get the point. You get the point. A lot. And all the variations. But how would you describe his idea?
Well, I think of it this way. If somebody were to ask me, so tell me about one of the TED Talks, and I would say, Scott spoke to us about how to humanize technology.
Oh, I love that because that's what you took from it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That actually is super close to, well, that's the outcome we wanted, actually. You got the
Right.
outcome that we wanted. The idea was what promises has tech made us and what promises has it broken? That was kind of the idea, right? But
Yes.
what you took from it, because he talked about it promising us three things, and he just chose the big three, and they
Mm-hmm.
were alliterative. Like it
Right.
was, you remember it?
It was connection,
Connection,
convenience,
convenience.
and
Oh, Mark.
creativity.
Oh, Mark,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Hey,
Okay. Wow.
hey!
Hey. You're actually proving the point. Again, we didn't talk about this ahead of time. You remembered them from last week. That was
And remember, that was almost a week ago,
yeah, it was
right?
almost a week
Keep
ago.
going, keep going.
No, that's really good because part of the container of you remembering what he talked about, like you probably could have came home and told your wife, like this guy, the guy that Kathy coached, his name's Scott, and he talked about humanizing tech. He talked about, three promises that tech made us. It was like connection, convenience and creativity. Has it broken any of those promises? She doesn't have to know anything else. And she already probably has an 80% understanding of what he talked about.
Yeah.
So think about it. So when you say things so they stick, then his job, Scott's job, is 80% done. Now everything he adds so much value. So then he could tell a great story. He can give a good example because he's already, remember the example he gave? So we're just going to talk about this one because it's easy. We both saw it. We both know it. Scott wanted to talk about AI, but we didn't want it to be in the forefront because everybody's talking about AI, and we wanted his talk to be more human and more evergreen. And so we put AI into the creativity bucket. That's where he decided to teach people what AI could and couldn't do. And very appropriate. People are using AI, and he's very much against AI art. He refused to use it in any of, he doesn't use it at work. He didn't use it. He supports human human hearts too, but human art. But he was able to put that, he was able to use that to support the bigger idea. Then instead of making it the big idea, because that idea is not sticky right now, everybody's talking about AI, the other idea is stickier, then he can bring in the AI and say, okay, look, I'm going to show you 2 ways to use AI. One is not creative. It's a spicy autocomplete. That's what he called it. Remember? He's like, you ask it this question and the predictability is this. It's going to answer this, this is this. Then he gave you the Nelson Mandela one. He's like, hey, if you were doing a school thing, instead of just asking it to write a book report, what if you said, I want to interview Nelson Mandela? Then you can do a podcast, like you can do like you were doing a podcast with Nelson Mandela. That's creative. That one's not. So also when you say something so it sticks, it's not just for the cool stickiness factor. It helps our brain to know where to file things.
It helps our brains where to file things, and it helps our brains to put it at the top of the file cabinet, right? Because you think about this human brain. Yep. And this is what I was talking about before. We are flooded with information all the time, right? And so every piece of information is competing for a spot in the top drawer at the front of the drawer. So as soon as you open it up, it's the first thing you see and you remember. That's the inspiration. You know, yours, our greatest gift for the ideas that we have is to make sure that a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 months from now, if I ask Cathey, so wait, what was that talk about that you hadn't seen in 3 months? And you can say it.
Yeah, right. So it's like longevity.
Yeah.
What? Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot again, Mark. Like,
go for it.
I know you're up for the task. What is a TED Talk? Let's stay in the TED space because then a lot of people probably have seen them. What's one of the oldest TED Talks that you can still like very vividly remember the big idea and basically what it's about? You understand the idea, the container, even if you don't remember exactly what was said.
So the one, and I can't think of her name right now, but I see it a lot because it's in the teacher space. And I see her face right now, although I think she's passed away. But she spoke about the kindness that we need to show to our students, even if some of them get on your last nerve.
Mark's like, I know all about this.
You know, and I feel like in the education world, they show that a lot, just as a reminder. Even if they're not your favorite, you got to treat them like they're your favorite.
Oh, I love that. Oh, you treat them like they're your favorite. See, now I don't know who the person is. I've never seen the talk, and I'm not going to forget. Like I will remember it because of the way that you said it to me, you know. Yeah. And I know I've told this story before, but you know, I have a friend named Will Cuddy, and he was working with my friend John Waller, our friend John Waller. And in the video, you know, they're in the kind of the documentary film space, and he was going to go audition for a part in the movie Wild, and like a pretty big extra part, like one that you had to actually audition for. You're not just like background, you know. And his friend had seen the Amy Cuddy, no relation to Will Cuddy. It's so funny that it's and his friend had seen her Your Body Language Shapes You and just talked about the power poses and going into the bathroom and doing like the Wonder Woman pose, even if you're a man, right? Just doing a pose that gives you some confidence before you go into an interview. And so his friend told him about it. And so he's like, oh, what the hell? I'll do it. He got the part. He was in the movie, and he reached out to Amy Cuddy afterwards. It's in her book. It's in her latest book, The Story. And he reached out to her and they ended up going to watch the premiere of the movie together. So her idea, her container of Your Body Language Shapes You, and his friend's description of that talk that he had never seen at that point, like, affected his life.
That, I do remember you telling me that story, and I love that. And actually, what it makes me think of, and this will be a pivot and yet a connection all together, is I think one of the other ways to make an idea stick is to remember how to move your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even just mean in terms of Amy Cuddy and Wonder Woman poses, but I think I might have spoken to you about this before, but I've gone to a lot of presentations and trainings, and there's this one that I attended almost a year ago that I'm guaranteeing I won't ever forget.
Mm-hmm.
She spoke about the many different ways that we play. Her talk was really about happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And she spoke about the many different ways. We all have a different way that we play. And her play is around movement. Mm-hmm. And to demonstrate that, she showed us a picture of an old cassette tape. And then she started playing some of her favorite tunes. And then she invited people up to the front of the room to stand on the stage floor, AKA dance floor. And for about 5 or 6 minutes, as the music changed, we were all dancing. And I'll never forget that, right? Like, to me, one of the old ways of getting people to think of an idea is you write it out, probably for that letter that you were going to put in the back of a pony or wrap around the leg of a pigeon. And it was written and it was read. Written and read. And then we advance, and now it's spoken and heard. Spoken and heard. And now in this new world, TikTok videos and everything else, the things that are sticking, like I think about some of these viral videos, and a lot of these viral videos are people doing things, different dances, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes me think, like, how do you take an idea that you have and get people to move your idea, or to move in your idea, or to associate a movement with your idea? Because I think we haven't, as a society, enough tapped into that kinesthetic and that movement part of remembering, right? And yet we live in a world where, all right, there's some old school dances that I'm sure, listen, I know my sister can do the Running Man anytime, right?
Kid and Play. I was doing the Kid and Play over the weekend, remember?
Yes, right? And it's like you were talking about Margaritaville, right? There are certain songs that never leave our minds. There are certain dance moves, even if you can't kick as high as you used to, you still remember the moves. I mean, how many parties you're gonna go to and everybody still knows the electric slide, right?
Yeah.
Like, so how could we be incorporating movement and associating movement with our message to make it stick? So that every time somebody walks in a room, it's like, man, and I don't remember anybody. Well, actually, I remember, and I want to say it was Brian who spoke about animation. Was it Brian, the speaker?
Um, oh yeah, yep. Brian McLean.
At the end of his speech, when he had that big machine on stage
He
and
was
he
running.
walked, right? He could have just pressed a button or something, but he actually walked from one side of the stage very slowly as we heard this inaudible thing. And then he went back and he walked quickly and we heard it clearly. Like that movement, even if I forget everything else, and I won't, but that movement will be something that will be burned into my memory.
I know, you're right. I love that. And especially like he did it twice and he's like, "Do you want it faster or slower?" And everybody's like, "Faster, faster, faster." And he's like, "Woo!" Like, the whole, you're right, the movement. And then we heard it differently because when it was faster, all the frames came together faster and the voice was different. That was really cool. I love this thought of like, you know, I think I had this line in my book, The Unbreakable Rules of Marketing, a long time ago. It was in the chapter Emotions Rule the World. And it was, when you move people, they move. And what I meant by that is when you move them with emotions, you'll move them physically, like they'll do something, they'll act on it. And I was trying to look up right now. I can't remember it verbatim. It's in my story file somewhere, but I have so many things tagged with the word idea, but I'll say this not quite as verbatim as I wrote it in my story file. But I wrote something in my story file that said, it was kind of a quote from me. I said it in a coaching session one time. I go, you have a really great idea when it doesn't have to include you, that it can actually, like, the idea is bigger than you. You might have been the one that said it or put it into the world. That's what a movement is. When somebody's created something or started something and it doesn't need them anymore, it's a really good idea.
So I'm
It
laughing.
moves. It moves.
I'm laughing because I really don't want to put the spotlight on me, but so we remember over 10 years ago, I did this whole speech called Short on Confidence, right?
Yes.
And in front of the world, I pulled my pants down in front of on stage, right? And for anybody who's watching doesn't know it, I was wearing shorts.
Yeah,
right?
very long
I was wearing very
basketball
long
shorts underneath
right?
it.
Right? Here's what I remember. About a year later, I stopped on a road trip in DC and I ran into a good friend. Tell me if you recognize this name, Kathy. Jim Key.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Wonderful, amazing human being. I
Yep.
love myself some Jim Key.
Yep, me too.
And Jim comes up to me and
He
he
says it like
tells
it is,
me,
by the way. Before
yes,
whatever you're gonna say, he says it like it is. So
he does. He does. Jim comes up to me and tells me that there was somebody that he had seen speak that day who pulled their pants down in their speech, right?
like a year
And
later, you meaning
a year later,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And what it told me was like, wow, you did something that somebody else on the planet who you don't know, who I don't know, who probably doesn't know me, we've probably never been in the same space, but it's stuck.
It's stuck. They probably didn't have that conversation you and I had at Ripe in Queens, New York about that. Because the first time you and I had the conversation, I remember we were sitting in Ripe and we were like, do you think it's a good idea should I pull my pants down if getting to that stage of where it would be on the world stage? And I was like, 1000%, absolutely no questions. But please make sure that you have long make sure you have long basketball shorts on so nobody confuses the shorts you have
Yes.
underneath with underwear, right? I remember this conversation.
Yes.
And I love that it was so sticky. And here's something, the reason I mentioned some of the behind the scene details though, too, because this is another technical piece of saying things so they stick. You need to be executing that well. Think of our friend John Waller. Like, we're about to have his celebration of life this weekend. And
Mm,
I've been so nervous because I'm emceeing it. And I'm like, I want to curate this the way John Waller would. And he
mm,
was such a curator of wonderful things. He thought about every little detail, how people would digest it, what it would make them feel. And although you can't control everything, to think about how things could be received and controlled is a great thing. It's great
mm.
preparation. And you and I having that conversation, I think you've detailed this a little bit more in our community and speaker skills. You're like, I was in Malaysia when I did that. Like, I don't know how people are going to react if I pull my pants down. I'm not in America anymore. Like, there were a lot of things that you thought about before you actually did it. And I think that that is a huge piece of saying it so it sticks,
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
that
Well,
intention behind it.
first of all, can I tell you how many people spooked me out? They're like, they'll never let you back in they won't let you out of the country, right?
You made
but
it out though.
but I will tell you something else that I think will always stick with me about that. And I think this kind of goes back to your point about like just word choice and what the association is. The speech was called Short
Mm.
on Confidence. And it was about not being confident enough to wear shorts.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so just
Everything was intertwined.
right. And so to me, also the future of speaking when it comes with saying things and making them stick is we are constantly, crazy enough, coming up with all of these words in so many different. I read the other day that there are 470,000 plus words in the English language alone. And
Mhm.
you and I both know that every year there's like a new word that they add to the dictionary, right? So I say all that to say is many moons ago, it was harder sometimes to make things stick because the language was still being developed. So there were fewer words. Now we've got so many different ways to say things that I feel that all of these extra words actually create an opportunity for us to play with words so that we can make our ideas stick. And I just encourage everybody to really think about how do you play with double meanings and make things sound clever so that okay, all
Oh,
right, see
short
what
on
you did there.
confidence.
I
Oh, you're
see
not
what you
confident
did
wearing
there.
I see what you did. You're not confident wearing shorts. Short on confident. Oh, I get it. Yeah. Oh, and then you're taking your pants off. Oh. No, I love that, Mark. I think it's so good. I think it would be fun for anybody watching. Like we do drills in our community all the time. It would be fun right now to kind of like ask the audience, and we'll kind of do it, right? Even though there's no audience that we're kind of engaging with, somebody watching this in the future. But
Mhm.
what are some movie lines that have stuck with you? Think about think about how much writers spend making sure that an entire movie sometimes will come down to one scene that's like the critical scene. It's like the scene, and there usually will be a really good line that goes with that. All right, you go first. We'll go back and forth. There's a ton, right? I already had like 5 immediately.
So I'm laughing because the one that jumped out at me is not a famous line at all, but it has stuck with me forever. One of my favorite movies is The Breakfast Club.
Oh, yeah.
And first of all, the first time I ever saw it, I saw the edited version. So there were certain words that were used in the edited version that I thought were the actual real line until I saw the unedited version, right? So there's this scene where Judd Nelson's character is talking about what kind of house he grew up with, right? And he's talking about his father. And he's like, but Dad, what about you? Damn you. No, Dad, what about you? Damn you. No, Dad, what about you? Then I find out it's no, Dad, what about you? Fuck you. Right? That line always said, because there was,
Mm,
first of all, there was so much emotion in there there was the repetition in there.
Yeah, the repetition. Yep.
And so that's what stuck out. I think that's why that line stuck out to me. The emotion and the repetition.
Well, you did a good job of like performing it. So that was good, Mark. I give you an A for that. We'll get in the teacher space. I give you an A. The one I immediately thought of course, when I was thinking about it and I was like, show me the money from
Jerry Maguire.
Repetition in that one as well, right? Because Cuba Gooding Jr. is like, show me the money. And then all of a sudden he's dancing. He's like, show me the money. Show me. Come on, Jerry. I want you to repeat it. Show me the money. It's like, again, come on, Jerry. Show me the money. Like, and then it became this whole thing. And then he's in the bathroom. If you remember the scene. And then he's like, because Cuba Gooding Jr. is like, show me that he's in his, and then he's like in the bathroom. Like he had like walked through and then he's screaming it, show me the money. And so there was repetition. But it also was the big part of the movie. And so if you've seen it, even if you haven't, you've heard the line, but if you've seen it, you know that was a pretty big twist in that movie. Was right. Is that he would leave whatever the name of the company that Jerry Maguire was working for and go with him and take a chance on him.
Well, I got to tell you, outside of the movie world, somebody had just gave a keynote. And he was talking about, he asked the question, how strong is your Wi-Fi, right? Mm-hmm. But he wasn't talking about Wi-Fi. He was talking about how strong is your Wi-Fi, right?
Oh,
and right? And why do we stay connected to people?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how his Wi-Fi in the students he teaches, and especially even in his family, right? And he kept using this term, my Wi-Fi is mad strong.
Ooh.
And he said that so many times that he could just go, and your Wi-Fi's got to be what? Mad
strong. Yeah. I love that.
And what I would want people to understand is it wasn't just the words. I mean, you could just tell the passion and enthusiasm he had behind that. And I say that because when you were speaking about Jerry Maguire, show me the money, Jerry. Like, Cuba Gooding Jr. put so much energy.
He did. He's like dancing around and he's like,
Because anybody could have said, Jerry, show me the money.
Right. That's true, Mark. You're hitting a part now that's like delivery and the meaning behind the words. The words just aren't the words. And so one of them is the technicality of the container and it's sticky, but it also becomes sticky the way that you deliver it. Right. I know that you love wrestling, right? And I forgot what they call it now. It's like WWE, right?
WWE, yes.
Okay. I remember when it was like WWF. Anyway, WWE. And I know that you've talked about this, Mark, a lot, but that in the WWE world, there's a lot of like, they create personas. There's a lot of call and response. There's a lot of like, so they're doing a lot of things on that piece that you're talking about, which is the delivery piece. Because if I could imagine how boring, these matches would be if they're like, in one corner, we have Rowdy Piper, who is like, right? Like, so there's some oomph that you put into that, I love that to think about. And I love, that we play around with styles at Speaker Skills Academy, because that's super important. Like when you said that was like mad strong, I was like, oh, that's so awesome. That's terminology that not everybody could use. And so it probably made it really specific to this guy,
Yeah.
And it felt very authentic. And so even thinking about what would stick is like asking yourself, what are things that I say that like nobody else could say it like me? Like, how could I make it be very me?
Right.
Like, our Rose, we love Rose. Rose is our tech wizard, as she loves to be called, because that's what she is. And when something goes wrong, what does Rose always say? Did you forget?
I think
I tell you, you're going to go, oh, she goes, what the tech?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
What the heck? She goes, what the tech? So I always laugh, and the first time she said that, and now it's so her. She's so cute and funny and passionate and smart, and so when something breaks, she's just like, "What the tech?" And so sometimes it's kinda like it's like a mad, like, "What the tech?" And other times it's like, literally like, "What the heck? What happened?"
I did forget that, and but as soon as you said it, it's like, oh yeah, Rose always says that, right? And I'm sure that at some point that came organically, and then it became her phrase, right?
Yeah.
But I'd like to take what you just said and then connected. You brought up wrestling, so I'm just going to bring this up. And you brought up Roddy Piper.
Because he's only one of the few I can remember.
But you know what? So Roddy Piper went the movie out for a little while, and he did a movie called They Live, that John Carpenter directed. And John Carpenter found out that Roddy Piper used to keep a notebook, very similar to the notebooks we use when we're taking notebooks, right? Those like those marble notebooks.
Yep.
And Roddy Piper used to keep a notebook where he would write lines that he could then use, in his wrestling character. And John Carpenter happened to see this book and read a line in there that ended up in the movie They Live. And the line was, "I came here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum."
So I'm about to kick some ass. Oh, that is so good. I love that.
But it came from this practice of, how you talk about story files and keeping that down? Well, sometimes we hear things like, why are we not writing these things down? Sometimes we say awesome things and we say them organically and somebody reacts. And then 5 or 6 minutes later, you're like, wait, how did I say that? And it's like, damn, it's gone. Like, I would love for us to be able to, just like the story file, to capture some of these awesome things that either we've said or that we've heard from others, but more importantly, that we've said, and find ways to then incorporate those into messages. And especially when you say something where you see people react, it's like there's no better test than people reacting to what you said.
Yeah, exactly. Repeating what you said, reacting to what you said, yeah. God, that's such a good line. It reminds me too, and it makes me think we should give, not homework, but we should give something that everybody can do. Cause I think we're really hitting on something strong. And if you're watching right now, you don't have to be a professional speaker. Look, you could even be a professional wrestler and it's good for you. But I think if even in a meeting, if you're able to create a container or say something sticky or have a certain way that you deliver it or have a call and response, think about how much more effective it's going to be. It makes me think of one more thing because, we hit really hard on this, like keep a story file, right? Where we're always like, oh, if you have a good story, put it in your story file so you can go back to it. It reminds me that back in the day, there was like this old Italian opera singer, and he was very famous for his beautiful, like very deep lyrics. And somebody asked him one time, and this is way before cell phones, right? And somebody asked him, like, how are you? What's your practice? And he was like, oh, I have a notebook. I keep I probably wasn't a notebook, but it was like he keeps. Like he was like, I write down every single word that I hear that I've never heard before that sounds very alive and fascinating to me. And so he made it a practice to first listen, right? It wasn't just you always say it, Mark, right? In order to tell good stories, you first have to hunt and gather them first.
Yes.
So first thing that we're doing is we're opening our brain to this way of like, we got to listen. Same thing with story files. You don't think you have good stories to tell? You have to, when they come up, you have to write them down. There's no way. I have 2,107 stories in my story file today. Could you imagine? If you paid me $1 million to even get half of that, I'd come nowhere near it. Right? Like, I'll give you $1 million if you can recall even 10% of it.
I know.
Like, what?
I know.
Cathey, I'll give you $1 million. Literally, I'm going to grab your story file. If you can remember 10%, not happening. And the reason why the prep piece of this is important, because it does do that two thing. It makes you pay attention. But then if you're doing it right, if you are capturing it, Mark, like here, I'm just going to, like, this is an impromptu thing. And I don't know if you have this.
Go for it.
I don't know if you have this as a category in your story file, but one of my categories is catchphrases. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do catchphrases. If I spell it right, start writing my name. Marc Cathey, catchphrases. Okay. I'm going to do catchphrases, and then I will see what some of the things that I put in here. And I won't remember some of them. I'll be like, what? I don't know. But I tagged it as catchphrases. Okay. There's the tag, catchphrases. Okay. All right. Let me read all these. Sorry, I put images in there. There we go. Oh, okay. So our friend Justin, who we were with last weekend, he said this beautiful one. He said, grief is the price you pay for a good relationship. It's a catchphrase. It's his quote. Why is that catchy? Because he said that when you have a good relationship, the reason you grieve over someone is because you had a good relationship. That's the price you pay for a good relationship, right? I have one in here that says, don't forget the audience. It's something that I said. And so I put it in as a catchphrase, right? Stories are the superhero of speaking. You know who said that? You know who I have it listed as? You know who I gave credit for?
Cathey Onion?
One Mark Williams. No, one Mark.
What?
You must have said
I
it.
said that.
I don't even remember that you said it. Yeah. I don't remember that you said it, Mark. But I tagged you on it. I never take credit for other people when somebody says something. So you must have said it I didn't even put anything under it. I just put stories are the superhero of speaking. Mark Williams. Right there. Right? Jinglify your message. I know that came from you.
I remember that. Yes. I remember
that. Lou, here's another one on grief. Not that we're talking about grief all the time, but Lou Raja said grief is just unexpressed love, right? And then one last one for mine, right? Because I had it in here. Information informs, but stories stick. That was one that I came up with. So
I love the contrast of so many of those, by the way.
Yeah. I love that too. So anybody watching right now, hopefully what you can do is you can elevate your speaking and make things sticky just by some of the things that we mentioned. Mark, do you have any other tips you would have people do? We've said so many. Like if we recap some of the things you said, were really good.
I would because I just complimented you on it or highlighted it, I would go for that other tip. Contrast.
Yeah.
Look for contrast.
Look for the contrast. Yeah. I like it.
One of my favorite ones, if I were to look under catchphrases, would be just when you think you've got all the answers, I change the questions.
Oh, I love it.
So that would be my tip. Look for a contrast when you're trying to create an idea that sticks. Because our brains look for patterns, but our brains are triggered when you break up the pattern. So the contrast does wonders for the brain in terms of remembering things.
No, I love that. Because then that's an easy thing you can do. You can say, okay, here's my idea. Even if you don't already have it in a sticky, catchy way, you can kind of say, well, this is kind of what I'm talking about. And then you do the contrasting statements. What's something over here? Okay, what's the opposite? How can I play with contrast? I love that. That is brilliant. And you're right. A lot of catchy things have that contrast.
Here's my quick homework assignment for everybody watching. Of course, the teacher would give the homework assignment, right?
Yes. I was like, okay, here we go, teacher Mark.
Let's call this a 7-day challenge. Let's just call this a 7-day challenge, right? And whether it be a notebook or whether it be your phone somewhere, like for the next 7 days, anytime you hear or say something that somebody like reacts to, or like they're like, oh, say that again, or they're like, oh, I love the way you said that, write it down. Just write it down. And even if you don't use it, just exposing it yourself to these things can just really light up your brain. So capture it all. Capture all the sticky things that are said throughout the week.
I love that, Mark. It's so good. Well, I think that kind of wraps up we went on a great journey. So anybody watching, thank you for, partaking and listening to us talk about the future of speaking. And today I hope the say it so it sticks with you and you do the things we said. And catch us next time when we'll be talking about something else that has to do with the future of speaking.
Talk to you in the future.
Talk to you in the future.